What is up, you guys? I'm Charmx. Today I'm going to be reacting to how one man survived being lost 438 days at sea by Real Life Lore. Now, I think Real Life Lore makes really cool videos, and this title really got my attention. How do you survive 438 days at sea? Like, especially without any fresh water, because you can't drink seawater, otherwise you'll dehydrate yourself, right? Because of the salt in the seawater, so your body has to use its own water to filter out the salt that's in seawater. Anyway, I'm intrigued. Hope this be quite awesome. The original link's in the description, and yeah, without any further ado, let's begin.
The Pacific Ocean is mind-bogglingly big. If you started here off the coast of northern Chile and dug a hole straight through the earth and came out on the other side, you'd discover that you'd still be in the Pacific Ocean in the South China Sea. The Pacific covers about 1/3 of...
Wait, what? So if you dug a hole straight through from there to the other side, you'd be in the sea. Okay.
Earth's entire surface, and it's bigger than all of the land on Earth combined. Except for a few scattered islands, it's also mostly empty, which means that if you're ever unfortunate enough to get lost here, there's a very good chance that nobody will ever find you.
Thanks for the hope.
Which makes the story of Jose Salvador Alvarenga and his rescue all the more fascinating. He currently holds a world record that he achieved on accident and that probably nobody wants to beat. The longest time spent being lost at sea. Against all odds, he somehow survived being lost for 438 days in the...
430, like, I can't fathom being stuck 438 days on the sea. I mean, the only positive side to that is that it'd give you a lot of time to make up new sea shanties.
In the Pacific, so his record probably won't be beaten anytime soon. But how did he do it? The answers lie in how his misadventure began. In 2012, Alvarenga was an experienced fisherman in Mexico. On November 17th, he and another guy named Ezequiel Cordoba departed together on their small fishing boat from the tiny fishing village of Costa Azul on the Mexican Pacific.
Oh, well, at least you know he was a fisher, so I guess he could get food that way. Wait, so he ate raw fish for like a year? He better have taken some like anti-parasitic medication or whatever when he got rescued, because you can guarantee he had some kind of parasites in him from that.
Coast. They planned to only work for a 30-hour fishing shift, so their boat was pretty small and not at all equipped for the night.
That's what their boat looked like?
It was basically a canoe with no roof or cabin, was only 7 meters long, and only had one small motor and a refrigerator for storing their fish. They knew that a storm was coming near the area, but fishermen in these parts of Mexico can earn enough money in a day to support themselves for an entire week.
Wow. Wait, they can work for a day and then they can support themselves for a week? I think that's everyone's dream. Work one day a week and the rest of the time you get off.
So they decided to take their chances and traveled 120 kilometers away from the coast to work. At 1 a.m., the storm hit them and was threatening to sink their boat. In a panic, the two men cut their fishing lines and dropped everything they catch and most of it.
Oh my goodness, they cut their fishing line. They don't even have anything to fish anymore? They don't have anything to fish?
Their gear overboard to make themselves more maneuverable. They were 6 hours away from the coast, so they traveled through the storm and the night in a desperate attempt to get back. By 7 a.m., they were only 24 kilometers away from the coast and could see mountains on the horizon. But then, awful luck struck them and their motor died. Without any paddles, oars, or sails.
Yeah, you always gotta go out with like paddles, you know? Don't trust engines.
The unusually strong wind began pushing their boat back out towards the ocean. Their onboard radio still thankfully worked, however, so they frantically reported their position to their boss, who responded saying that he was coming, but their battery died and all they heard afterwards was silence. Imagine the frustration that they must have both felt in that moment as their radio
It'd be freaking terrifying.
died and all.
Little do they know, this is just... Wait, if one guy was rescued and one guy lived 438 days, I think we can assume that one of them does not live.
All contact with the outside world with it. And as they watched the mountains and the horizon that they were so close to slowly disappear, as their boat that they were trapped on gradually was pushed back out into the vast abyss. Their boss did organize a search party that looked for them for days, but as their boat drifted further out into
Did they not bring like cell phones with them or something? If they had a cell phone, because this is what, in 2012 or 2013, if they just had a cell phone, they could probably, I don't know if a cell phone would work that far out. You know, that's many, many miles without a cell phone tower, so maybe it wouldn't even work that way. Never mind then.
the vastness of the Pacific, it got harder and harder, so they eventually were forced to give up. Just 5 days later, the winds had already blown them 450 kilometers off
280 miles out.
the coast before finally settling down. They were surrounded by nothing but ocean in every direction, and their boat was so small they knew that they probably would never be spotted from the air. They had no flare gun or any other way to signal for help other than by waving, so they knew that their chances of survival were going to be slim. They had no supplies left on board.
Yeah, because they chucked them all out. I don't think chucking them out, like the supplies out, was a good idea. Like that just seems crazy. Because like they should have, what, did they have a fishing pole? Did they throw that out too? Like you should have at least kept something to catch fish. You know, always hope for the best but expect the worst. And they should have hoped that they would have gone to land, but expected that they wouldn't have gone to land, and they should have kept something in case they didn't. But they didn't.
So they were forced to catch tiny fish or birds that landed on their boat with their bare hands for food. They
Why would a fish land on their boat?
grabbed plastic bottles that they found floating nearby them and used them to collect rainwater for drinking water. But during long periods of no rain, they were forced to mostly drink the blood of turtles that they caught with their
What?
hands or their own urine. Imagine going day
Blood of turtles. That's some next level hardcore. Very great,
after
man.
day, month after month in a tiny box with only one other person to talk to, and the only other ways to entertain yourselves being catching fish or napping. It's easy to understand how somebody
How sunburnt were they by the end of this?
could go insane under these conditions, which, according to Alvarenga's story, his friend did. The other guy, Cordoba, gave up hope about 4 months into their isolation and became suicidal. He got sick from all of the raw food that they were eating and refused to eat.
Well, someone got sick from the raw food. I'm surprised the other guy didn't get sick from it. Like, fish have parasites. That's why a lot of, like, sushi, if it's not frozen properly, the parasites can actually, like, go in you and, like, survive. But normally when the fish are frozen, it'll actually kill the parasites. You'll still eat the parasites, but they won't be alive. But if it's not frozen properly, there's a high chance you can get parasites. And I'm surprised both of them didn't die from eating raw fish for over a year.
And eventually starved to death. Alvarenga was then all alone in the middle of nowhere with no other human in sight as far as the horizon could see, a tiny speck inside of the enormous Pacific. And as you can see from this shipping map, the Central Pacific where he was somewhere at is a very quiet part of the world.
He's just in the middle of it all. He's in the middle of nothing.
Ships rarely come through this area, but even still, he claims to have encountered one when he was alone. A cargo ship apparently passed right by him and 4 men on board spotted him and waved, but they just kept moving past.
What? I was gonna say, well, you know, these cargo ships, the odds of someone seeing you from it are very little, or very low, because you're in the middle of nowhere. People aren't just gonna be looking out. People are gonna be doing their own stuff inside the cargo ship. But 4 people saw you and they just waved and that's it? Oh my goodness.
Him and never even bothered to stop. Imagine how frustrated you would have been again if you were lost for months. You were all alone and you finally spotted rescue, but they just ignored you and kept on moving.
Were they just ignorant to his situation? Were they just not aware of what was going on? I find that so hard to believe that they just waved and then kept going. Like, did they know he was stranded and like, ha, look at that sucker, let's keep going. Like, what was the thought process?
11 months in, and Alvarenga had traveled about 8,000 kilometers across the ocean in
5,000 miles.
boat. His clothes were shredded, and he only had a sweatshirt to protect himself against the sun. But finally, on the 30th of January 2014, he spotted coconuts bobbing around his boat and birds landing around him. He knew that land was near, and after drifting some more,
You should grab the coconuts, man. Like, you can get some water from it or something.
he discovered an island that appeared to be uninhabited. It took him half a day just to drift near the shore when he finally jumped out of his boat and left its safety for the first time in over a year. He swam ashore and discovered a house, and when he knocked, he made contact with the first other humans since he left his village in Mexico 438 days ago,
That's wild.
traveling nearly 11,000 kilometers. To put into perspective, just how far away that is. Imagine starting in a tiny boat in Lisbon, Portugal, and traveling less than 1 mile per hour until you drifted across the land to Hiroshima, Japan. Alvarenga ended up washing ashore on the Avon Atoll, which is the southern tip of the Marshall Islands and one of the most remote spots on the planet. Had he missed this spot, the next likely stop for him would have been the Philippines, nearly 5,000 more
That's another almost half a year or something.
kilometers away. And since it took him 438 days to travel roughly 11,000 kilometers, it probably would have taken him about 240 more days to hit the Philippines. Fortunately for him though, he somehow landed on this tiny speck in the middle of the biggest ocean on Earth and got himself rescued because of it. Later, he was
That's a crazy story.
flown back to his home in El Salvador, where he published a book and got himself sued by the family of his friend who died on the boat, because they claim that he probably ate him.
I was actually kind of thinking that, you know? I didn't mention it because I thought it was a little bit gruesome, but you know, did he eat the guy who was sick? But then again, I was thinking, if the guy was sick, why would you eat him? Because then, you know, the sickness that's in him, especially if he's not cooked, you would get the sickness logically, you know? So at the same time, I'm like, did he really eat him? Because that you're risking getting yourself in that position too, you know?
So the lesson is, even if you survive more than a year stranded at sea, you could still end up getting sued over something that you may or may not have actually done while you were out there. But if you're like me and the ocean terrifies you so much that you'll never actually go, but you want to learn more about the terrifying
Yeah, I don't like the ocean either. I don't know. Like, some of it intrigues me. You know, I like the idea of kind of like an Assassin's Creed Black Mask situation where you're on a pirate boat. I love that. But yeah, I don't like the ocean. It's just like this where you can't see anything. That's kind of terrifying. Anyway, I hope you guys like this video. I think this is pretty crazy. The fact that he survived off of like, since they didn't have water for a portion of it, they had to drink turtle's blood and urine. First off, how many turtles were around you that was just like a resource that you decided to use? Like, maybe one turtle here or there I could see being possible, but what the frig? Were they just swimming under your boat or something? And then you're like, oh, I'm just gonna grab another turtle. Time for a little snack. I don't understand. You know, whatever. Anyway, I hope you guys like this video. Make sure you guys go subscribe to Real Life Lore if you enjoyed this. The original link's in the description. And if you're new, subscribe to the family. And yeah, I think I'll rate this out of a 10. I think this is really cool. I'd rate this like a 7. But yeah, with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Boop.